Welcome, everyone. Coach Reslow here from ResV Systems, continuing on the adventure with the interview series that, again, I've been really lucky to have just outstanding coaches. And man, I just keep on rolling forward. Today, I got Coach Giglio from Wentworth Institute of Technology, one of the top men's volleyball coaches in the country. And again, can't thank you enough for being on the show. I already said that to you a couple of times off camera, but Evin, welcome to the show. How are things?
They're going well. Thanks for having me. I felt like I had to come on and give some credibility because you've been having guys like George Chapel and Steve England on your cast, and I didn't, I wanted a little more from you for today, so I thought I'd come on and help you out a little bit and take some time to chat with you.
Great. Well, I'm feeling pretty good because I butchered George's name really bad, and I feel like I landed yours, so I'm already full steam ahead.
Yeah, there's always a big misconception with my last name because, as you know, most people call me Coach Gigs.
Yep.
But my last name is Giglio. Those two things don't really make a lot of sense. And so when you have a silent G in your last name, you just get used to people mixing it up unless they're usually straight off the boat from Italy. So no worries, but I appreciate it.
Well, I mean, you remember when I absolutely screwed it up completely for a whole match, where I was calling you Gigs basically, Giglio in a match when you were playing Riviere, and when that was brought to my attention, I mean, I looked at my shoes faster than I could imagine. I was like, "Oh, boy, that's not
Got
good."
some angry text from my mom. So
Yep, and I'm sure whenever I get to meet her, she's gonna hit me, and rightfully so. I've earned it. Uh, but yeah, man, great to have you on, and certainly want to talk a little volleyball with you and talk about your coaching because I again a a lot of times in these types of interviews, you sort of say things to pump everybody up. But again, I think you're one of the best. I really do. I think you're one of the top guys out there. And I've been lucky again. If you look at the list of people I've got to work with thus far in this interview series, a lot of them are top tier. And actually, the genesis of the project when I started doing this stuff, like you and Steve England were the first two guys. Like, oh, I'm going to get those two guys on. It's going to be the best. And then you had a kid and you were in the middle of the NCAA tournament, and I was like, all right, well, he's busy. And
yeah,
Steve became the easy winner because Steve hadn't started yet. So how's the family? Life is good, ready to rock?
yeah, definitely. It was an interesting year and a busy year having a second son the day before our first round NCAA tournament match. And so really it was exciting all around, exciting for the guys, great season, really happy to add to my family. And now I've got two sons, both about 18 months apart. And so it's just going to be a whole new challenge of being a dad of two, managing all that while coaching and trying to be successful with the Wentworth guys. But I think being a dad has given me a little bit of perspective as a coach and changed me a little bit, and hoping to use that as a positive in my coaching philosophy going forward, and just merging all these things together and kind of taking it as it goes.
It's the plan always. Let's get started with your background because I think your background's fascinating. And quite frankly, everybody's background is fascinating. We all come from a different area, different spots, we get to the same spot in different ways. So I know you played both at the D1 level and the D3 level. But let's go further back. Started playing in high school?
Yeah, so I was really late to the sport of volleyball. I was predominantly grew up in Southern California, so what's big in California, baseball and basketball. And so those were really my two main sports growing up. I did those year round. And then once I got to high school, I actually played a year of football too, but I think I was about 5'7" as a freshman, and I weighed about 32 pounds. So I wasn't,
So the equipment weighed more than you did?
yeah, I wasn't, played a very, very mediocre corner. And so, yeah, so baseball and basketball were really what I focused on mainly. And then played my freshman year, baseball. I was over the summer. We were doing summer leagues. And I just kind of had lost the interest in baseball a little bit. It wasn't as fun. Guys that I played with weren't playing anymore. and I just didn't really enjoy it. So one of my best friends, he said, "Why don't you just come play volleyball after basketball season? You know, we need guys." He was really talented. He played at UC Irvine. He had two older brothers. He won a national championship there. He had two older brothers that played at CSUN. So these guys are really, really talented volleyball family. So one of my best friends said, "I'm come play." So I gave it a shot. I played my sophomore year. I'm sure I was terrible, but I enjoyed it. And then I didn't play volleyball my junior year of high school because I blew my ankle out playing basketball. Really nasty ankle injury. So I took the year off I slogged through basketball season and I just really struggled physically. Uh, and again, I wasn't very big. So I took the year off, took my rehab a lot more seriously, and then came back and played my senior year of high school. And so, yeah, I didn't play a whole lot of volleyball for my high school career, just 2 years. I was really uncertain about kind of what I wanted to do, graduated high school, didn't have a focus academically, didn't really have a strong desire to move away or do anything
Mm.
specific. So I went to junior college and I started playing volleyball in just like a class essentially with a couple guys that I knew. We were playing a couple days, and it was these guys. It was basically a club team at the junior college level, and it was all these guys that were older than me that had played a lot of good volleyball, but for whatever reason, flamed out at the D1 level, weren't sure what they were doing, um, and so I'd come back to this junior college, and so I started playing some really good volleyball with some really talented guys in our area. There's a lot of guys that played D1 and would come back, so I just playing with guys that are way better than me.
Mm.
And I started to kind of pick it up. I feel like a little bit more. I only played 1 year of club volleyball, and so there I grew a little bit, got a little more mature. So then I played 2 years at Moore Park Junior College after that. So I played for an actual junior college team. Really enjoyed my experience and felt like I'm still, I played 2 years. A lot of my teammates were like, all right, we're just going to transfer to a Cal State school or UC school and call it a day. And this was great. And then I was like, man, I feel like I still have so much left. So that's when I started looking at my options and found Springfield and finished my college career out here on the East Coast. So, um, I still, even at Springfield, I feel like I was probably best at volleyball at the age of 23, 24. But at that time, I was already coaching at Wentworth. So,
Right.
my
Right.
my career as a volleyball player, I felt like I was just so late to the game, and physically I was wasn't very strong until really got to Springfield and started lifting heavy and hard, and so I don't know. I just had a little bit of a late experience to the game, but I got to play a lot of other sports. Played a lot of baseball, a lot of basketball. I took a semester off college to go move to the mountains and be a ski bum, work on the mountain and ski like 5 days a
Wow.
week. And that was a really cool experience. So I've had a lot of really good experiences and played different sports and did different things. And maybe that hampered me a little bit volleyball wise. But I think maybe have a little more well-rounded, uh, as a coach and as a player, by having all these different experiences.
No, I agree entirely. I think one of the massive strengths that you have in comparableness to other coaches and other situations is that you've been in almost every region of what's popular in volleyball. Like you were part of the California scene. You did the junior college stuff. You went to Springfield, who's a bastion of high level volleyball. So you have all these different experiences. And I didn't know about the ski thing. Like that's pretty awesome. I don't know how you left. I probably I probably would. The fact that I can't ski, I mean, I fall pretty hard. So, at 6'6", I would have been dead already. But I do like the idea of hanging out at a ski resort and doing cool stuff. But point of the story is that you have all these different experiences. And I think that makes you highly relatable, highly uh, efficient and successful in the recruiting aspect. I mean, if I'm a kid, you can blow me away with three different stories that is just like, oh my God. All right. And then, add to the fact that you know your stuff and Wentworth is a nice school. So a lot of good things there. But yeah, I also can relate with the idea of coming to volleyball late as well as maturing as an athlete past my college prime. I became the top basketball player I was going to be 2 years after I graduated. and that's when I had the opportunity to play professionally in Europe and all that fun stuff. And of course, screwed it up because that's the Reslow way. But it was, it's one of those things that, I think a lot of the college success, and maybe you can back my play on this a little bit, is timing. When did you get to your peak? When did you realize how much effort it was actually going to take for you to be the best player you can be, and then actually apply it? For me, it was later, and it sounds like for you, you had all these different experiences, and then again, you found it later as well.
Yeah, I think I was fortunate that whatever sport I was playing, I was always surrounded by guys that were really talented.
Mm,
Like I always was playing against guys that were bigger, stronger, faster guys that, I played Little League with guys that are in Major League Baseball now,
mm,
right? I played volleyball consistently with guys that were winning national championships, and playing overseas afterwards. And I was okay, well, I know I'm not that. So I know that I always have to work my butt off in order to even be in the conversation of
mm.
being able to get on the court or
Yeah,
get on the
yeah, yeah.
practice court. And that's all I really ever wanted to do was compete.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I know that I'm limited talent wise, physicality wise, but can I bring something to the table? Can I be competitive? And that's kind of fueled me a lot. So, yeah, these different experiences. And I did think about trying to play professionally volleyball wise, um, because I am of Jewish descent. And so a buddy of mine, we talked about maybe going to Israel and trying to play at a lower league and probably make
Sure.
$12 a year and have them put us up in a shack. And um, I kind of like, that was right when I started after my first season at Wentworth. And I thought, man, well, if I do that, I was part time here, but I was like, if I do that, they might not let me have my job back, and then I'm kind of starting from square one again. And I don't know where that's going to take me. So I did definitely think like really considered exploring that and trying to delay being an adult and responsible for a little bit longer if I could. But it worked out because I don't think I'd still have my job here had I gone that route.
Yeah, it's funny how fate and some other things sort of and life sort of jump in at certain moments. Very similar feeling again to relate to you in that story with me and playing overseas in Poland. Like the reason I got an opportunity to play is that I was playing in the league and Jacek Duda was on my team. Jacek was the center for Providence College back when Rick Pitino was there and when they went to the Final Four when they probably shouldn't have, and it really jump started Rick's career, in my opinion anyway. And Yazik continued to play professional basketball in Europe. And so I'm on his team in this semi-pro league in Rhode Island. And he's like, dude, they need me to go back to Poland, but I don't want to do it anymore. You should go. And I was like, all right, yeah, let's go, let's go. That sounds great. And he said, probably work out a deal where you get your own house and you'll get he said apartment. You get your own apartment. You get, maybe $50,000 a year. One problem though, you have to change your citizenship. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a little different. And then I had to think about it a little bit. Do I really want to change my citizenship? And then sadly and unfortunately, 9/11 happened. And, you had the massive terrorist attack in the United States and, planes at the buildings and craziness, sadness, miserable. I mean, awful, awful stuff. And I remember thinking, now's probably not a good time to change my citizenship. The crazy
Yeah,
thing about a United States citizenship, and again, I can't speak for other countries because I've never lived there, but the crazy thing about the United States citizenship, it's easy to give away, but it's hard to get back. So,
right.
you can denounce it all you want, but once you try to, if you want to return and get that U.S. citizenship back, there's this underlining, hey, if you want it back so bad, why'd you give it up in the first place, type of thing. And back then in the basketball world, especially in the European leagues and Eastern European leagues, because of the disparity between European basketball and United States basketball. Those teams, those professional teams, you were only allowed or allotted 2 U.S. citizens to play. I don't know if that rule still exists. I mean, I've been out of the basketball world for a long time now, but back then you can only have 2 U.S. guys, and I was not good enough to be considered. They didn't want to spend one of those slots on me, which I completely understand. A 6'6" guy, I have some size and I can rebound, I can shoot a little bit, but I'm not a I wasn't a D1 monster, and I wasn't an NBA guy that just got cut. Like I was,
Right.
just a guy. And at the end of the day, they weren't the only way they were going to even take a flyer on me is if I changed my citizenship. And once that event happened that changed the world, I thought it was not a good idea. And then to cap it off, I ended up hurting myself in a match anyway, and then you're damaged goods and it doesn't matter. So
Sure.
volleyball from there on.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
But it's funny how life gets in the way. All right, so now you get to Wentworth, right? And you're starting from scratch. Although, that Wentworth program I think you were what, 3 years after I started at JWU? I mean, I was
Yeah.
'09.
Yeah. I was, I think my first season was like 11, 12.
Yeah. So I remember in 9 and 10 when we got to play Wentworth, they had weird like Marquette uniforms. Like it was sort of a strange team. I don't know what their level was. I think we beat them once and they beat us, and it was not like it wasn't official sanctioned bouts. It was more like, hey, we're at this tournament. We're at this what was it, the Boston, the BU tournament or something like that, and we'd see them. Um, but from once you got in, you stabilized that program pretty quick. Although you did have some injuries to start, if I recall. So how did it get started, and what was your modus operandi going forward once you got there?
Yeah. So when I took over, I graduated college. I spent 1 year coaching D1 women's at a school called Austin P State University in Tennessee,
Right. Yeah.
and had a really good season. We're the youngest coaching staff in the country. I think we were both 23 at the time,
Wow, that is young.
and we won the conference for the first time in like 19 years. They were in the OVC at the time, and we made the NCAA tournament for the first time in school history. And then we got whacked by Illinois in the first round at Illinois, and then the head coach quit, so I lost my job as the assistant, as kind of how that's how it usually works
Oh yeah.
in the
Oh yeah.
D1 world. And I spent a long time trying to figure out where am I going to go? Am I going to try to stay in the D1 world? Where do I want to live? And I had a really hard time finding a job. And then I found Wentworth, and ended up working out. Like I said, I was part time. Um, I took over the team. I want to say we had, I don't know, I don't even know if we had 12 guys. And it was a range of guys that hadn't played a lot of volleyball. We were fortunate that we had a core. I think the team before me graduated like 6, 7 guys. And so I think they were pretty good that year, and then lost a lot of starters. But what I was fortunate to have was like 4 guys that were younger. They were underclassmen that played a little bit of volleyball. And so we had some guys already on the team that could play, but didn't have any kind of depth.
Hmm.
And so at least I had a little bit of a base to start with. I didn't have to like build from zero. And so, we and probably our big guy at the time was Ross Burdett,
Ross, I
who,
remember Ross.
yeah, right, who was known pretty fondly by most. And he was a really, really talented, solid outside for us. And I think he was a sophomore. So I had some time. Okay, I got some of these guys I can play a little bit. Um, and then the first year we were under 500, had a few guys injured. We were starting. I didn't make the schedule. The previous coach did. He signed us up for a tournament at Springfield. It was Springfield Juniata when they were at like their peak Juniata. Uh, Baruch, who was a huge team at the time, they were at
Oh
NCAA
yeah.
every year. They were monsters. And then Kane out of New Jersey. And we were starting a libero that had never played indoor volleyball until about 3 months ago. Walk on middles, and I'm like, man, this is tough.
This is
And
tough.
so, you know, just basically it was like, all right, well, it doesn't matter what I know about volleyball one way or the other. We got to start recruiting.
Yep.
And so that was new for me. I never recruited before. And I just basically started to try to find guys that, uh, kind of fit. I had all these ideas about the guys I was going to recruit. And then I get to Wentworth. And I'm like, okay, well, you got to recruit guys in a box. right? You can only recruit guys that are going to fit the academic mold, right? Because there was
Mm,
guys on the team when I got here that were good volleyball players. The previous coach had recruited some talented guys, and then they did not last because they were not Wentworth guys,
mm.
right? They just did not were not interested in what we offered academically,
Right.
and so
It's like,
those guys,
yeah.
talented, didn't last.
Yeah, it's like being at JWU and offering education, and they show up for education, and we don't have it, and it's like, all right, they're going to leave. It
Precisely, precisely.
has to be the right fit and the right academic type of kid for you, even if there are good volleyball players or not.
Yep. And we got fortunate that I went to the basketball coach. I said, "Give me the last kid, the last guy that didn't make your roster, that and to see if he wants to play volleyball." And it was a guy by the name of Brian Mann, who was about 6'4", 6'5", really athletic, and was like, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot." And he ended up being a really, really good player for us offensively.
Yeah, I
University
remember.
of New Haven had a D2 men's volleyball program that they cut. So we snagged their best guy, a Rhode Island guy, Sean Donahue.
Oh, I remember.
Uh,
I don't know all these guys. It's bringing back memories. This is great.
yeah, right. And so we got those two guys. And I think I brought in a recruiting class the next year of like 5 or 6 guys. And, not that we were strong, but we had a winning season.
Hmm.
And we started to kind of figure things out. And we just, at the time, as you know, the GNAC was strong,
Mm,
right? With Riv being, the top, and Emmanuel had some really, really, really talented guys. Uh, Even when I started to, obviously with you guys, Emerson had a bunch of guys from Southern California,
mm,
and so there was a lot of talented teams in the GNAC, and so uh, we were just trying to kind of tread water and get incrementally better. And I want to say, we finally had a really big recruiting class, probably in 14, 15. We started getting some guys, and it's just been kind of a slow ascent for us since then, that we've, identified guys that want to be engineers or architects or designers, or um, that want to play some good volleyball, that want to be in Boston and take advantage of all that the city offers for those majors specifically. And so, it's been a lot of hard work, and, um, scouring all of the country. Look at our roster, and you know, I think Mason, your guy, is our first Rhode Island guy since Sean Donahue. So
really? There hasn't been a Rhode Island guy since Donahue?
I don't believe so.
Wow.
We've had very few guys from in region. We have 3 guys from Massachusetts in the team this year. That's the most we've had in like 6, 7 years.
Hmm.
And so we've tried to branch out and find guys from, hey, bring somebody from Pennsylvania, from New Jersey, that wants to come to Boston and maybe get a little different experience than they would if they
Yeah.
stayed in their own backyard.
Yeah.
And so, we've been fortunate to get some talented guys, and I think guys have kind of bought into our culture and how we do things, and been fortunate to have some sustained success, which is hard to be good, and then it's hard to be good for a long time. Those two
Absolutely.
things are really, really difficult to accomplish, and I think right now we're enjoying a little bit of both those things.
Hmm. So talk about the hard work in the recruiting vein that you do, because I think one of the things you do very, very well amongst all of them is that you bust your tail in the recruiting side of it. Like I know there's been many a times where you and I have hung out on nationals trips and tournament trips, and you're out looking at everybody. And times when I want to sit down and just go, I remember I would want to sit down and just stop, and you're like, yeah, I'm doing another lap. I'll see you later. And it's like, dude, he just doesn't stop. So I mean, talk about the hard work that you put in on the recruiting side, because I think that's well worth noting.
Yeah, I think I like the last time we recruited together, I told you I hadn't had anything to eat or drink for 12 hours, and you were like, "What are you doing, man? Go sit down."
Yeah.
Um, you
Absolutely.
know, when you're, for a lot of us at the D3 world, it's a lot about education. In that, when you're trying to recruit a kid from Southern California, Nevada, they've never heard of Wentworth. They don't know what they don't know what JWU is, right? They don't know
Mm,
these places. And so even though we have all these great things to offer, a lot of it is about education. hey man, like I know you're 3,000 miles away, but these are the things that we do, right? And like, does that line up with what's important for you? Now, sometimes it's hard for a 16, 17-year-old to have any idea what's important to them,
Right.
and a lot of it's tough is too, is I watch a kid that's really talented. They gotta, they gotta have something that we have as a major. You can't be undecided at Wentworth. You can't come
Mm.
in and figure it out. You got to declare a major right away.
Mm.
And a lot of times those kids don't know. Their club coaches might know a lot about them volleyball wise, but they don't know what his GPA is, what he got on his SAT, what he wants to major in. Some do, but others haven't. They've maybe talked a lot about volleyball with those kids.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of, I don't think I've perfected it by any stretch, is, you know, trying to find the exact right kid or go through that method. So I think you just kind of have to leave no stone unturned, and reach out to a lot of different kids and kind of see, I'm really passionate about what I do and what Wentworth is about. And I think people understand that and see that. And so I think they know pretty quickly, okay, that is something that is of interest in me, or if a kid is got a 2.5 and wants to major in, I don't know, psychology. Well, that's not us. So now that kid's never going to be a fit for me,
Right.
right? And so I don't go back and forth with those kind of kids because they're just never going to fit the mold of what we offer. So maybe we're a smaller box and less kids fit into what it is that we do, but there's also not a million choices for our box
Right.
either,
Right.
right? And so there's only a few places, and yeah, I always say, like, if you can get into MIT, congratulations. You're one of 4%.
That's
And
right. Yeah.
so, and the same thing, if you're an Ivy League kid and you're that bright and brilliant, congratulations, man. That's really, really difficult to do. But if that's not your path, right, then what's your next option, right? What are you looking at? Do you want to continue to play volleyball in college while still getting a good degree? While still at Wentworth, you're going to get you're going to get a full-time job while you're in school here, right? You're going to play competitive volleyball. We're going to play the top 15 teams in the country. We're going to be playing in April, where we have a chance to be in the NCAA tournament. So maybe you're sacrificing a little bit. You want to be all the way at this highest level, but there's so many good things right here, right?
Mm.
There's so many good opportunities. Our gym is competitive. You're gonna have fun. You're gonna have fun playing volleyball. You're gonna work hard. It's all these great things. So I think a lot of it is just trying to educate kids on what opportunities they have and what experience they can really have. And a lot of them probably haven't thought about it. I mean, I know growing up in Southern California, I didn't know what Division 3 volleyball was.
True.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's a lot bigger now than it was when, I was playing club. It's grown exponentially, but there was nobody educating me about, hey, these are the, I wasn't going to make it at UCLA, like that wasn't, I wasn't nearly good enough to be in that gym. But that doesn't mean there weren't places that I could go play really competitive volleyball and have a great time and have a great experience. It just didn't get the exposure to it. So I think part
Mm.
of that is my job, is educating these guys on what it is they experience they could have, and that there's options for them.
Yeah, and you're tireless at it. I mean, I think that's the other point that I really want you to speak to a little bit, is that you just keep going and going. How do you, is there a shut off valve for you? Are you like, do you have a moment where you're like, all right, I need to take a moment? Because that
No,
story
well,
is absolutely true. Where you're like, dude, I haven't eaten in 12 hours. And I was shocked. I was like, dude, if I didn't eat in 12 hours, like either I would have fallen over, I would have gone raged and started throwing stuff. Like your dedication to your craft is pretty impressive.
well, I think, again, I think it goes back to when I was saying earlier about just growing up playing sports in Southern California. To even get on the field, the court, you got to be competitive.
Mm.
And so I've kind of competition is pretty much the impetus, is what's driven my life,
Mm.
right? And I've always been competitive at whatever I've done. Um, and so I try to do that. It's kind of how I try to tackle recruiting. And because you've seen it, man, at the Division 3 world, a guy could have a good program, takes 1 year off from recruiting or it doesn't land the guys, and then you're in a tailspin
Mm,
and it's hard to recover, and I've seen it now that I've been coaching here long enough, is that you play some team that, man, 5 years ago, these guys were monsters,
mm.
you know, and now they're barely scraping by. And so like that fear of we're never gonna I hope I have a group chat with my assistant coaches, and I always text them in January. All right, guys, we're never gonna get another recruit. Nobody's gonna come to Wentworth. It's over for us. We had a good run. And they all just roll their eyes like, all right,
Oh
Evin,
yeah.
come on, man. Like, you're full of it. You're gonna be fine. We're gonna get 6 guys. Someone's gonna be 6'6" and competitive, like we'll be all right. And so every year we go through that dance. And so I don't know, maybe it's just the fear of um I don't I gotta be successful. We gotta compete. And I said it's always driven me. And so even as I've gotten older, and maybe slightly more mature, I maybe not, at least more responsibility. I can say
More
that.
responsible. That's where
More
you're at. I'm with you too.
responsibility.
My
Yeah.
wife will tell you straight away that I am not more mature than
No, no. So,
I've.
you know, and, and so honestly, I think I'm having as much fun doing this stuff now as I was, in 2017 when we were, in the Final Four and doing that with the great group of guys. And so I don't think I'm any less passionate or having less fun or less competitive. So I don't know. I think that's just kind of how I'm built. And I don't, you know, you're not going to win or get to the same level of success every single year, right? We're not always going to be a second, third round NCAA tournament team, but that's not, I'm always going to try to train and get our guys to compete at the highest level that we're capable of doing. But yeah, on the recruiting side, I don't know. Maybe it's just fear of we're not going to get guys. We're not going to be what we have been, or we're not going to have that sustained level of success. So, um,
Yeah, a
I mean,
couple.
how it is. You could be the
I do.
best or worst coach in the world, but if you don't have the dudes, you don't have
Right.
talent in your gym. It only matters so much. You're only going to get so far.
I remember Kolek telling me once that his goal every year, and you probably share this thought as well, is that if I can have the best two teams in the GNAC in my gym, then I'm going to win. And for the longest time, Riv did it, and then certainly I feel like you're in that mode as well. LaSalle's your main rival right now, so they're getting close to that world. But that's sort of what it's about. You need the horses to go to the barn. If you don't have the horses, you're going to be in the field and just sitting there
Yeah.
looking lonely. So I love that you talked about competitiveness. I just did a quick hitter video for ResV about why we play the games, because right now the Rhode Island high school volleyball scene is round and third, heading home. They're getting to the end, and there's some teams out there that are playing that are on the bubble for playoffs or not in the playoffs at all, and they're kids on that team that are just like, man, this stinks. Why am I playing? And the reason we play is because we're competitive. We want to compete. We want to challenge ourselves against the best people, the best players, the best ideas, and that's how you rate yourself, and also that's how you get great experiences. I bet there are many experiences that you would not have had if you don't compete. And it's character driven, and it helps in the real life world, and certainly you just described how it's helped you create this program due to your competitiveness in terms of recruitment. um, so I think you're right on board there. And I can, absolutely agree that Brian Garapi and Ben Lind and all of my assistant coaches and people that have worked for me in the past have had that same phone call. We're going to stink. We are not going to be good. We are in trouble. I mean, they're going to fire me, and then you're coming with me. And, and then again, a good assistant coach, a good manager, a good, friend will say, listen, you're going to be all right. You're putting the work in. Good things are going to happen. So you've been doing this for a while now, man. How many years at Wentworth?
I think it's like my 12th season.
12. All right. So
Yeah.
you're at the mark where I stopped. So I got 12 years in before the program was dissolved. How has volleyball changed from the beginning to the end? Like, it has the game gotten different? Have the players gotten different? How is it? Where is it in your thoughts on the game?
Yeah. I think Well, just the growth at both the high school level. Like I think there were some big votes this week where like Minnesota sanctioned high school volleyball, and there's a few other states. I believe Delaware was one. So the growth, you go to nationals and you see way more teams. You see guys playing from states that, we've had guys visit from Texas and, um, there's we have a guy coming from Nevada this year, Las Vegas guy coming this year, first time. Nevada's had volleyball for a while, but, um, so you're seeing, I think, guys from other areas, predominantly some in the South. Got a guy on the team from Washington, right? And he had to play girls volleyball growing up for the most part because boys volleyball didn't really exist for him until a lot later.
Mm,
And so maybe you're seeing this growth. We talked about even Division III when I first started at Wentworth. I want to say there was, I don't know, 55 Division III programs in the
right.
country. Last I counted, I think we're at 116, give or take.
Mhm.
So that's a big change.
Oh yeah.
And so I think what you've seen in terms of the competitiveness level is it's evened out a little bit in that it used to be here's these top three programs in the country that are just far and away better than everybody else and can't be touched.
Mm,
And now at the Division III level, you're like, well, the team that's ranked 20th in the country, they can beat the number one, two team in the country, right? That used to be a slaughter. And
that's
now it's
true.
like, well, it's possible, right?
Mhm.
So I just think the growth has maybe even things out a little bit in terms of competitiveness. I think the game is way more physical. Um, we're big, right? Like you look at our roster and we've got, you know, this year our we didn't start a guy under 6'3",
Mm,
6'4" some days, right? And so the physicality of it, I think, is is bigger and guys are stronger and um, you know, you used to not see that kind of size, I don't think, universally. And so, is the game of volleyball wildly different than when I started? Probably not, right? The still same things are still important, right? Same things are still important, but there's just more guys doing it. There's more guys
mm,
playing. There's more teams. Maybe guys are more willing to say, you know, there's maybe guys are a little more educated now because they're okay. I play for this really good club team, and the guy that was really good on my team last year is now playing at a Division III, right? Whereas he didn't do that previously. So,
right.
oh, hey, okay, like I know a little more about this, right? I'm more willing to do it, right? I'm more willing to consider that option, And so, um, I don't know. I think I do things. I think the biggest difference, and my older alumni will tell you this because they're all my assistants now, is that I'm way nicer to the guys now than I was when they were playing. And
Hmm.
I think part of that is the age, is where I was so much closer in age to them when I first started that I had to kind of establish a lot of boundaries and act like I was way older than I was and be a lot more militant.
Mm,
And now I think I'm a little more uh, I'm not as mean to be like this. I'm just not as mean. But the things that we prioritize and that are important to us haven't changed, right? And so I don't think that's really much different than it was for me 8, 9 years ago. Maybe just the way that I convey that message to our guys is slightly different than it was in 2014.
sure, sure. And have you found that the players are different now? 12 years later.
You know, I know that there's a lot of coaches and say like, oh, kids now are entitled or they're this and they're that or they're softer. And well, I don't know. Maybe some of them are and some aren't, right? I can't put every kid in a box. And I think that at Wentworth, I think the nice thing about our guys is that a lot of them are very similar and they're very, as an engineer, you got to be process based. right?
Mm,
You're very like logical, and step by step. And so that really hasn't changed, right? A mechanical engineer doesn't think a whole lot differently today than they did a few years ago,
true.
right? So I think our guys are relatively similar, as they always have been, right? So maybe I'm insulated from that a little bit, but I don't know, things change and things evolve. And as a coach, you know, they always use like the example is like if you're a brain surgeon and you're doing surgery the same way you were 12 years ago today, you're going to get fired, right? Like you're so out of date because the medical world rapidly evolves,
Sure.
right? And so as a coach and as a teacher, new methods come out, or proven methods are proven methods. And so you have to continue to kind of tinker and adjust a little bit. Our end goal is always the same, but the path that we get there every year is not always going to be exactly the same, right? So I think I've held true to my principles and, like I said, things that are important for me, and they just tweak the approach a little bit to make sure that we're getting there the best way possible. And like, yeah, I yell at guys sometimes, like still, and I think guys understand why I'm doing it, right? And when it's important to do. Um, but yeah, do I yell less than I used to? Probably. But are my standards any lower? I don't think so.
No, probably not. Well, I remember you ripping into some guys due to Jay Woo's performance, and I was always pretty happy. I was like, all right, we got him mad. This is good.
I still get fired up.
Yeah,
I'm not,
yeah.
I'm not a saint on the sideline. I'm pretty calm until I'm not.
Right. Yep. Yep.
But again, I think it's consistent because I think guys understand the standard of which we're supposed to operate with.
Well, that's the
You
thing
know,
I always admired. I admire a lot, but I admired that particularly. There's been plenty of matches where I've seen you perform, and also I've competed against you where you've removed players. Like, just no, you're studs. They got to go. It's not working. And I always had trouble with that. I always had trouble doing that in the Johnson Wales world because maybe lack of depth. I didn't have as many good players, but at the same time, I kind of latched onto that idea that you go with who's brought you to the dance, that type of thing. They'll work their way out of it. Maybe I can talk them at a timeout and get them where they need to go. But I've seen you just yank guys and say, "All right, that's it. We're done for you for now." And I was like, "Oh man, I wish I had the stones to do that sometimes." And it's usually worked in your favor. It's basically what you've just described. Hey, this is our standard. You're not meeting our standard. I don't care if you're an All American, get on the bench, someone else will get another shot. And I've always thought that was pretty awesome. Like, all right,
well,
that's how I get done.
I tell that to our guys in the practice gym, and so if I don't do that on game day, then I don't want to be a fraud,
Right.
you
Right.
know. We have we got a lot of talented guys, right? When we played at the end of the season, I think you were announcing the game against LaSalle, our last regular season game. We didn't even start. Most of our starters did not play in that match,
Right.
right? And we lost in five, and I think it was 16-14, or it was close,
It
right,
was
in the
close.
fifth,
Yeah.
and I was frustrated. I was mad that we lost. And I told our guys, like, listen, I don't care that LeBou wasn't playing, right? Like, you guys are all on the roster for a reason,
Mm.
right? And sooner or later, you're going to be called to contribute, right? And so here's an opportunity for you in an important match, right? Because we still have the one seed locked up, but hey, we can beat LaSalle with some of our non-starters and go undefeated in conference and get another win. That's great,
Mm.
So I was mad at the end of the match, not because we lost, but because like, hey guys, here's an opportunity for you. This guy isn't playing today. He didn't even warm up. He's not going in, right? Like there was 3, 4 guys that play a lot that did not play that day. So here's an opportunity for you. And again, there's a reason you're on the roster. I always say like, I don't take guys just to take guys, right? We don't just have guys on our team just for the heck of it, because you know what? Wentworth is too time consuming academically. If you're going to be here, you might as well go full speed. You might
Oh
as
yeah.
well give your best effort because you have a lot of other hands on your time, right? And you're doing important things outside of the volleyball gym.
Mm.
So I always try if I'm saying it, I'm preaching it, then I better act on it, or else guys are going to get, well, it's just a load of BS, right? It's just hot air coming from coach. I don't actually have an opportunity. No, this guy's not playing today. Here's your opportunity. Yeah, like even this year, Hunter Oshman, right? All-American monster for us this
Mm.
year. He had some bad games. Other guys got opportunities, right? And like, yeah, that dude's a stud for us. And he was great. I mean, we to look at his numbers in important matches. Look at his numbers in the GNAC finals. Look at his numbers versus St. John Fisher. I mean,
Mm.
he was the dude.
Oh yeah.
He was the dude. But there were some matches where he struggled a little bit, and a couple other guys got some opportunities. And yeah, this guy's an All-American. He's been a starter for us every year, every opportunity that he can. I mean, he's been healthy and able to play. He's been out there. But you know what? There are some days where here's other chances for guys, or he's having a bad day. I got to have some faith in those other guys, or else what have they been working towards?
Right. That's right. And how do you handle personalities that are a little bit wild, that are a little bit outside? We haven't really dove into the culture aspect yet. I mean, that's probably my next question because every coach that we've had on thus far, culture has been a gigantic part of what they're trying to accomplish. So I'd love to hear your version of it as well. But how do you handle personalities that are outside what you're looking for?
You know, I it's always funny. There's a little bit of the recruiting piece too.
Mm.
It's always funny when I talk to some coaches and they tell me about a guy, right? He's this or he's that. Well, I don't know about you, Scott, but when I was 17, uh, I was a jerk.
Yep.
You know, and I was not a very good dude. I was super immature. Yeah, I had a
Mm.
really bad attitude. But and was I the same at 17 as I was at 22? No, right? I was a very different guy, very different person. And so I think that you have to understand that how a guy is when you get him is not necessarily how that guy's going to be, even a year from now.
True.
Right. And so I try to be a little more open minded about how a person is. Now, if their coach calls me and says, well, he's got a couple felonies, all right, maybe I'm not recruiting that guy.
That's a
Right.
flag enough. Yeah, that's a red flag. We'll give
But,
him that.
oh, the kid's got a bad attitude. Okay, well, why? Right. Like what's bad about it? Is he selfish? Is he just frustrated? Does he, is he just bad at communicating because he's an engineer and doesn't like to speak?
Mm.
We've had some guys in our gym that coaches have told me like, he doesn't work that hard. He's kind of lazy. He doesn't take feedback. And in my head, I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's true. But is it just because this kid, he works differently? His mind is different than
Right.
what you're used to. Right. And so I think that, listen, I can't do, I'm terrible at math. I could never be an engineer, right? Like never for a second. I don't know what my guys are doing in class. Like you
Right.
put me in a differential equations class, I would get a zero. Okay. But I think I do understand a little bit about how 18-year-old engineers think
Mm.
and work. Right. And so it's breaking through a little bit of that and kind of understanding how these guys' personalities are. And I always tell guys like if you're weird, be weird. Just be yourself. Because like we got dudes on the team that are weirder than you, I promise. Like so just be, I think like that's one of the good things about our culture is that guys have the space to be themselves and
Yeah.
they're pretty much then they're accepted because of it. Right. Nobody we operate without a lot of ego in our gym.
Mm.
I think a good example is late in the season I was in the gym before practice. We had one net up already. And a bunch of our freshmen and sophomores were like just goofing around, right? Like before practice, playing short court. There was like 8 of them. And then I look over at court 2, and it's Tristan McDonough and Hunter Oshman, 2 seniors. They're just setting up the nets by themselves. Like nobody, and I go to Tristan. I said, Tristan, why don't you tell these dudes over here that are just doing nothing, playing around to help you? He's like, yeah, coach, they'll probably mess it up anyways. I don't mind doing it. And
Yeah.
it's like, here's
Yeah.
2 seniors, right? That like would just they don't have to do that, right? And like Hunter, like that dude's a manimal. You know what I mean? Like he
Yeah.
could just
Yeah.
pick up. He could just go ahead and pick up one of the guys and throw him over there and say, "Do it,"
Do it now.
And they don't. They're like, "Coach, we don't mind." It's like that. They're just operating without ego.
Mm,
They're just like, "That needs to go up." I'm not nobody. I'm not doing anything, so I'll do it.
yeah. Oh,
And so I
so
think
true.
that space of like guys able to be themselves and kind of understand what we're working towards, I think helps a little bit.
Do you do anything special to try to remove that ego from, like, I mean, I know you've had we all have had players that just haven't worked out, and it hasn't, you know, even though certain things have worked correctly, or look correct, it just hasn't worked out. And what do you try to do to minimize that type of thing happening? I guess is what I'm trying to stutter out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's, for me, a lot of it is in my coaching philosophy, what I tried to do early, because I think as a player, I didn't always really like my relationships with my coaches.
Yeah.
And part of that's on me. And I think part of it too was I didn't really feel like some of my coaches, this is going early on too, talking about high school basketball, really cared about me as a human being
Mm,
or were honest with me or a combination of both.
mm,
Right. And so when I started my program, I said, okay, what do I want to do things a little bit different? And I said, I always be honest with guys about how I see things. Never going to try to manipulate, or feed you a line. Right. So I'm going to be honest with you about how I see things and be very transparent. And I think our guys that resonates with them, because again, they are so process based. And a lot of them are, they're not the creative mind, they're the mechanical mind. Right. So to them, it makes sense. Right. So I think that my coaching philosophy kind of makes sense for how a lot of them operate as human beings.
mm.
Right. So just trying to be honest with guys and lay out the data for them and show them, okay, this is how we do things, and like giving them the space to, I think a lot about culture. And I try to think that like, yeah, like I said, we talked about, I have these principles that we act on, but I want to give guys the space to make this program their own, right? And
Mm.
and and create create part of the culture, not me always be the driving force of the culture. They talk about our seniors like Hunter and Tristan, Alex and Colin. Those are our four seniors this year. And I think the best thing that those guys did was not necessarily they were like leaders in the typical sense, but their personalities were very magnetic. And so trying to foster that positively, and guys are going to follow you and gravitate towards you just because you're charismatic and funny guys,
Mm.
right? And so how do you make sure that you're doing what you're doing is positive, right? You're using your personality for a positive and make sure it's not retracting from what we're trying to do every day. So um, I don't know. I think I've been fortunate with the guys that we've gotten, in terms of, we've had, of course, no, not every guy works out and
Right.
not everyone's perfect, but, um, I think that we've been fortunate to have guys really buy into my philosophy and how I am. And they get to Wentworth and they kind of feel the sense of, hey, these are guys that are like-minded, right? I think that's a big thing too here is finding like-minded guys that share the same interests and endpoint and goals, um, and be on the same page versus having 20 guys that are all kind of here for different reasons, selfish reasons, you know, uh, that are some guys, you can't be here and not care about school. You can,
Right.
you just won't be here very long, you know. And so just trying to find the mix of putting all that together and making it successful. Like I said, it's just a little bit different every year. But giving those guys a space to create what's important to them and think about their own goals and their own personalities and how do they want to lead, right? What style of leadership do they want to have on the team?
The complexities of coaching is way higher than most people realize. And certainly, to hear you talk about culture and about what's the right amount of space, what's the right amount of freedom for kids to become what they're going to become, but at the same time to the standards that you have set and all the I remember I was at a wedding, and I want to say it was a couple years ago now. I was at a wedding, and Ted Lasso had just come out, and this wedding was, friends of my wife, and they're all higher academia people, and they were the topic of the time when you got to sit and drink and hang out with everybody was, oh, how great is Ted Lasso? Oh, what unbelievable. I mean, and then they turned to me and go, Scott, do you like Ted Lasso? I'm like, yeah, he's great. Like, it's a great show. It isn't it amazing what is it? It's so great. And I'm like, yeah, it used to be my career. I used to do that stuff. Uh, but one of the things they kept talking about was how, oh man, it must be so fun and easy. And it's not easy. Like, it's really not easy. Add the culture that you want to create, add the standards you want to create, add the sport itself and winning and losing and the competition and the highs and lows of emotion. Add the fact that you have 20 plus, young men or women, depending on what you're coaching, and all the learning that they're doing at 18 to 20, like just like you described, 18 to 20, that's a volatile years in your life where you're trying to figure out who you are and what you're going to be and what you're going to do, and you're having incredible emotional responses to things that are happening all around you. And a lot of times it's the first time people have had to interact with other people and how they deal with things, and hey, I see it this way. Well, this player next to me sees it completely different, and we're going to have words about it. Like, these are things that are happening throughout that timeline. I always found it amazing, that moment where I was at that wedding, and how everyone thought being a coach was simple and how it was an easy job. And I was just like, dude,
Well,
you don't know.
I'm sure you got this a lot too. As you talk to people, you tell them what you do, and then they're like, "Oh, well, are you full time? Like, do you teach classes at the school too? Like, what else do you do?" No, no, I'm a full time coach, but I just steer in. I'm not trying to educate the world on what it is that I do every single day,
Sure.
um, or the timeline or things like that. It's just again, I think I'm fortunate that I really do. If I wasn't coaching, I don't know what it would be that I would be doing. I don't. I always say that I don't have a lot of marketable skills, and so that I
I
think I'm
disagree with that,
fortunate
but
that appreciate it. That I'm fortunate to be able to do something that I'm really passionate about, and I think that's gone a long way because I think our guys understand that I care a lot about them as human beings, that I'm passionate about what it is that we do, and that it's not a facade, or I'm not trying to give them some coach speak, or, I think Evin Giglio as a human being and Evin Giglio as a volleyball coach. So it's one and the same at this juncture now.
yeah, yeah.
There's not a whole lot of differences. I'm more patient with my 18-month-old than I am with my senior outsides, but otherwise there's not a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like to feel I'm in that same boat, but that's perfectly said. Let's talk about some of the fun things that I sort of end interviews with. Number one, give me some of your craziest moments as a coach.
Craziest moments as a coach. Oh man, I'd have to think. I should have thought previously about that one. What is a crazy? I just think like I don't know if it's crazy. It was just we used to play in the ECACs, right? The ECAC used to be a thing before the NCAA tournament was really big. It was like a supplemental tournament for those that don't know, like the NIT almost in basketball, but
Right.
because the NCAA tournament didn't exist prior to 2011 for D3 volleyball, that the ECAC had some good teams. And so one year we were in the ECAC, was at Stevenson. So we Boston to Owings Mills, Maryland is a long drive.
Oh
We had
yeah.
a bus, but we didn't have a big charter bus. It was like 25 seater. It was rough. It was a rough trip. We get down there. They forgot to book the referees. So
No.
it was it was just a whole thing. So, that was 2015. And then 2016, we made the NCAA tournament for the first time in school history. We hosted Hunter in the first round. We absolutely rocked them. It was a bloodbath. That was a lot. That was like the first time our gym was full, right? Like it was
Mm.
probably full for the finals of the GNAC versus Riv, but or Riv and LaSalle and all those matches. But we're in the NCAA tournament. The crowd is yelling. It started chanting Hunter High School because we were just bodied them. Uh, And so we get to we get to Rochester, and we're at the hotel, and I get in the elevator with the Stevenson head coach. And I just look at him like, hey man, this is a long way from the ECACs, huh? And it was just like this. It was just, I just remember thinking it was so different. Um, and then at the banquet, one of my favorite players of all time, Mike Hansen, who's just an absolute tremendous man. Now he's an adult, served in the military, just got back.
Oh wow.
Um, Great guy, great guy. Maybe one of the most important guys of our culture of all time.
Hmm.
He went up with Jake Reed, who was first team All American for us, longtime assistant. Jake Reed just actually inducted in the Wentworth Hall of Fame last weekend, which was
Right,
very, very cool. So
rightfully so.
those
Hmm.
guys two were our captains. Jake hates the public speak. Probably his least favorite thing to do of all time. His Hall of Fame speech was about 15 seconds long. And I don't even, he said thanks to coach. So it was like real brief.
He just wanted out of there.
So Jake's like, I'm not, because at the banquet in the NCAAs, the guys go up and they just give a short speech. And
Yeah.
so Jake said, Coach, I can't speak. Hanson's going to do it. So Hanson goes up there and he, 6'7". He's a big, intimidating guy. He's like, you guys, nobody knows what Wentworth is, but after this weekend, you guys are going to know who we are. Now we got whacked by New Paltz because they were monsters and they won the championship and all that. But
That's right.
I had just talked about Jake with this last week, like really 2 weeks ago, and he's like, Hanson said that, and we all kind of laughed. But he's like, it's true, coach. Like since that moment, we've kind of been on the stage and we've been relevant and all that. And so just to go from this ECAC smaller tournament where they forgot to book the refs, and it was just a cluster
Yeah, oh yeah.
to all of a sudden the final 8 teams are in one site in Rochester, and we're in that group and kind of that ascension. So I don't know if that's crazy necessarily, but just kind of that juxtaposition and change and kind of what path that sent us on, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that bleeds into the next thing, which may be a moot point, but the best win and the hardest defeat.
The best win. Ooh, I don't get like too jacked up for wins. I think if you had film on me and every time we've won a conference championship or an NCAA tournament game, you'll see me do this. That's like the extent of it. Um, I was pretty emotional when we beat LaSalle this year because I knew that I was not going to be able to go to the NCAA tournament with the guys because the birth of my son was the day the guys were traveling. And so I just really wanted them to have that experience because I know how fun and important it is, and how great it is. So I think that was pretty emotional for me this year. I think the toughest loss, definitely the toughest loss, I would say, was a 2017 Final Four
Mm,
when we lost in 5 to New Paltz. And had we won, it was at Springfield. We would have played Springfield in the national championship,
mm,
and that would have meant some things to me on a couple of different levels, having played there. So, and we were up 2-1. And I think we lost the fifth set, 15-12, 15. I still have not watched the full match. I've only watched the fifth set. And for a lot of years, I thought, did I not coach them properly in the fifth set? Did I not have enough discussions with my setter, Colin Ritter, about what we should be doing? And so I would say still to this day that I wake up some days and that loss stings the most. Is
mm.
that I don't know that we would have beat Springfield that year was an absolute unit. They were so good. We didn't match up that great against them. And so I don't know that we would have won a national championship that year. But that losing in 5 sets when you're up, in the final four and um, again, I watched that fifth set back, and I don't think that we would have done anything differently. New Paltz was just really, really good. I mean, so were
Yeah,
we. But
yeah, yeah.
so I would say that loss stings the most because we were very close to playing for a national championship at Springfield against Springfield with this first group of guys that had really kind of put us on the map,
Mm,
right? This first group that had been really super successful and had a lot of really talented guys, and we just were a little bit short And so that loss definitely is the most difficult for me in my career. And I don't think that, you know, I don't know that even if we are fortunate enough to get to a national championship and we lose in a national championship, I still don't know if that'll sting more than that 2017 loss. So that one probably will stick with me. That's more memorable than any probably any win because I expect us to win. That's the expectation, and I don't get too jacked up over any single win.
Well, if
But
you win the national championship, you'll get jacked up.
yeah, if
You
we
have
win a
every
national
right.
championship, we can amend my answer, and that'll be my answer. But
You're allowed to
uh,
get pumped for a national championship win. That's
yeah,
allowable.
all right, I agree. Yeah, well then that'll be if that ever happens, comes to fruition, then I'll amend.
And anything's possible, my man. What's one thing that you think coaches should know that they probably don't?
Coaches in general, the high school level, college, but what do you mean? Like, is there?
Yeah, I think originally the thought of that question was based on high school coaches, but college coaches as well.
Sure. So I would say for high school coaches is like well, I mean, you gotta, what's your motivation, right? Like, what are you trying to accomplish, right? I think that's important to define. Are you just want to give kids an opportunity to do something extracurricularly and have a little bit of fun? Are you trying to train guys to really improve their skill level and help them be the best they can be for high school and then pass that college? Like what is, so I think understanding what your motivation
Hmm.
is really, really important. And so, and I always think kind of operate, if you're going to do something, you might as well try to be really good at it.
Hmm.
Right. So if you're going to coach, don't just pick up the whistle, throw some drills together and call yourself a coach. Educate yourself the best of your ability so that you're giving these kids the best opportunity,
Hmm.
right? To thrive, right? So I'm not, like I said, I'm not very good at very many things, but what I am good at, I try to be really good at, right? So, but again, how much of your time are you willing to dedicate to that? Or do you have to dedicate to that? So, I think it's important to kind of define those things as a coach. What's your motivation? What are you trying to accomplish? And then act accordingly. So that would kind of be my advice. And I think too is learn and grow, right? Other fields, people don't do the same things they did. That's, in the 1980s, right? Like, don't be antiquated, right? Don't just because you've had a little bit of success or something worked for you 10 years ago there's new ways to do things. So learn and try to grow and get better. So that would probably be my advice to coaches and, seek out learning opportunities.
Don't be afraid to yank your All-American. Get him out of there.
Don't
You're
be,
getting it done.
don't be afraid to line change some guys. Uh,
Same
that,
question for players. What do you think is one thing a player should know that they probably don't?
yeah. My junior college coach, Steve Burkhart at Moore Park. I what I really liked about Coach Burkhart was that you generally had the sense that he believed that he cared about you as a person. And that was maybe the first coach that I was really aware of that.
Hmm.
And so that I appreciated long after I was done playing for him. But that I really appreciated. But he said a lot of funny things. And so I remember being a freshman on the team and I was the third or fourth middle. I wasn't in the lineup. And I'm watching guys out there hack it up and all of us on the bench are complaining. And then we go to practice and like I said, I told you I was a jerk, right? I was 19, 20 years old. I was a jerk. And we're all just complaining all the time. And we had a lot of bad attitudes. And so
Hmm.
I remember he would get furious. And I remember him saying to us as six, I say this to my buddy all the time I played with. He started yelling at us. It was after a game or after practice. I can't remember which one. And he goes, you know what? To all of us, you are not the answer. And we're all like, what? And he's like, if you were that great, you'd be in there or you wouldn't be here. You'd be playing you are not the answer. You're not the guy. And we all just were like, oh, okay,
Oh yeah.
And so I took from that basically as like, you just gotta like work hard and try to get better and like quit complaining, and do your best. Basically, it was the gist of what he was saying, but he just said it really, really funny to us. You're not the answer, basically. And so I think
Oh,
for players is, you, you know, um, just try to get better. Look what other guys are doing, right? A big motivator for me, talking about when I was in high school and I played with this guy and his brothers played in college. And I remember going to a lot of D1 games at Cal State Northridge and Pepperdine because those were really close to me. And my buddy's older brother was an undersized middle for Division One. And he is 6'4", maybe 6'5". And I was like, okay, I'm an undersized middle at it's the different level. What is this guy doing to be successful? How can I emulate? How can I replicate what this guy who's doing it better than me is doing?
mm,
Uh, and like, how can I work to be this guy on my scale, right? At my level. And so having some perspective, I think, right? Like, I think sometimes guys, you get, you know, you're a talented volleyball player relative to your area or your high school team or your club team, right? But hey, there's this big world of volleyball, right? What are these other guys that are playing at the higher level? What are they doing to be successful? How can I do that? How can I be that version? So that way I'm setting myself up to be successful. Not I get to college and oh shoot, right? Like I thought I was the man,
yeah.
and now everybody here is bigger, stronger, faster, more talented, works harder, and now I'm way behind the eight ball. So maybe a little bit of perspective, I think, is important for. It's hard to have that as a 17-year-old,
There is.
but getting some exposure to it, right, and having coaches or family members or parents or teammates that can help you with that, you know, kind of getting that exposure and that understanding that, I think is good for kids to learn and understand.
Yeah, the especially in today's world where the information age, like you can find information on almost anything. You just got to put your mind to it and really put the effort in, and also understand that there isn't some nefarious plan for why you're not playing. Like that's one of the beautiful parts of sport, right? If you're the guy, dude, I might turn that into a shirt. You are not the answer. ResV systems. But if you're not playing, there's a reason. It's not because the coach doesn't like you, or there's a nefarious plot to push you down. 99% of the time it's because the other guys are better options. And if they're better options, then you got to figure out how to become one of those better options. And
Yeah.
you got to go put the work in. There really is no rhyme or reason other than that.
Yeah, I wasn't in the lineup because I couldn't score and my block move stunk.
Yeah, exactly.
That
Exactly.
it's that was the real reason. It didn't have
Yeah.
anything to do with a guy,
Uh,
with the coach. I just wasn't all that good.
That's where like Hollywood and media sort of do coaching a disservice, and really it hurts players and students because you have all these. You ever watch a movie or a TV show about coaching? There's always well, this nefarious plot that the coach doesn't like the kid because the mom said something to him, or it I mean, I've never seen it work that way. My modus operandi has always been, I don't care who you are, I don't care what you look like, I don't care what you believe in. If you can get me 15 kills and 4 blocks, you're on the floor. Like, I don't give a crap. You know what I mean? Like, there isn't some outrageous plot to keep you on the bench. It's results. Are you the best option to get us a W? That's it. And if you're not, your goal has to be to figure out a way to become one of those guys. And
Yeah,
in theory, that's how it all should work. You keep pushing to try to become one of those guys, and through your efforts, the guy who's already there has to maintain an advantage, and keep working hard to be better than you. And then in the end, the rising tide lifts all boats, and at some point, you either pass them or you don't. Like, that's how it all works. And the coaching side, you try to make sure you manage those personalities and keep everyone motivated and working, and you try to make good decisions and match. But there isn't like, hey, I like one guy over the other. No, that guy gets me wins.
yeah, and you asked earlier about like what's different now, and it's just maybe some of these players. There's always been playing time issues, right, from the beginning
Sure.
of time, right? But maybe in this generation, in the information age, things are easier for guys, right? They're instant gratification. It's easier for them to access information, like you said. Um, a lot of them have been overstimulated and, you know, do a million things. And so they haven't maybe had that in their life prior to getting to college is the struggle. Maybe they haven't experienced the struggle, right? And things have been relatively easy for them or been given to them, or they can find an avenue to be successful in what they do relatively easily,
Yeah.
right? So, sometimes a kid is the first time is they're experiencing this struggle, and so they don't know how to go through that emotionally or process that correctly.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit of the battle as well. And maybe that's not their fault, right? That's not necessarily their fault. That's just the way things have been for them and as growing up, right? And so you got to try to teach a kid a little bit how to respond to that, and you know, what's their emotional response? How do they act? How do they operate in face of that a little bit of opposition? Because it's possible they never experienced it before. It's a new feeling
Yeah.
at the age of 18.
I think you're right on. I mean, Simon Sinek does a lot of stuff on that, where the idea that, it's not that kids are different, it's just the business world has changed, and because they've gone, the business world expects them to be able to handle challenge and handle disappointment well. And if it doesn't happen, if it hasn't happened because of the points that you just made, it's our job as management to figure out a way to explain and to teach and to educate them how to deal with that situation. And it's going to be hard because emotions are tough and no one likes being turned away, no one likes being disappointed, no one likes being told that they're not the guy, but it's part of life. And the fact that they've gone 18 years or so without having that experience, um, thinks that the coach or the professor or the teacher, whomever, has to deal with that situation, but you're going to change that person's life and allow them to be successful in the future if you're allowing them to understand how it's supposed to work and how to deal with that particular situation, so that it doesn't happen when they're in their mid 20s at a job and they have responsibilities and they freak out and lose their job. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right.
so it
Yeah.
becomes massively important that
Yeah.
that generation learns that.
And then, on the other side of the coin too, we've had guys too that, we've gotten guys that are good from talented volleyball areas, but they've always played with three, four, or five guys that were also really good.
Mm,
Right. And so now you got to teach that guy how to be the dude.
yeah,
Hey, you
yeah,
haven't had to be, you've been okay being a little bit in the background or the second or third guy. And now it's your turn to contribute massively and put this responsibility on your shoulders. So how do you respond? Because you haven't had to do that either. Right. And
mm,
so it kind of
yeah,
sometimes goes both ways with some of these guys. They've just gotten by on their ability, and there's been guys around them that are really, really talented and, playing really high level volleyball. And so, hey, now it's your turn. But how do you respond to that? Right.
yeah, yeah. All good points. Great. All right. Well, I've come to the end of my questions, man. I mean, it's been great having you, Evan. Always love talking volleyball with you, and I appreciate your time. I really do. I know you're a busy man. I'm sure you'd rather be recruiting than talking to some old coach who doesn't have a gig anymore. But I do. I think one of the things that I've been really happy with this interview series has been able to talk to coaches of your caliber, and so every time I get to sit down and provide an avenue for you to talk about how you do your work, I think it helps the volleyball world, and I think people that are definitely interested in the college coaching community and just coaching in general, I mean, really should check these interviews out because people don't realize how good a lot of these coaches are that I'm talking to.
Well, no,
So
I really appreciate it. I've always tried to uh, help, with the growth of volleyball or coaches, um, in any kind of way that I've been able. I've been connected with Gold Medal Squared as a volleyball organization, and we had the coaching clinic on here a couple of weeks ago at Wentworth, and I've always participated in the AVCA mentorship program,
yeah,
and I've a lot of good relationships out of there. And I try to be pretty open and honest, and I think if coaches are seeking help or growth or want to know things, that I'm always happy to share
Mm.
my philosophy and ideas with people, and give it to you honestly, like I do just with my guys in the gym every day. So, I appreciate the avenue to talk a little bit about Wentworth and who we are and what I do, and all of our philosophy. And anytime you want to chat with someone, Scott, I'm available, man. So
Oh, dude, I take you
you
up on
call on
that
me
all
as
the
much
time.
as you like.
I take you up on that all the time. Although
Of
you
course.
didn't talk to me as much when I was a competitor at Johnson and Wales, but I think there's a there's a
That's
reason.
what we shared a Airbnb like 4 years in a row in nationals. So don't try to tell your listeners otherwise. You're out of your mind.
Well, I'm just saying there were certain things that there's some competitive play that goes involved when you're a
Oh,
competitive
it's not going to
coach.
tell you how to beat us, you know. I
No,
mean,
you would share some information with Steve. That, Steve, wasn't a conference opponent, whereas I was. Let's be honest.
you got to keep a couple things close to the vest, when you're trying to win. So
Absolutely. Again, man, thank you so much. And again, if you're, ResV consumers, if you're interested in stuff like this, like and share and subscribe. I always hate saying it. I feel uncomfortable saying that stuff, but that's what you have to do for this stuff. But appreciate everyone watching. The ResV All-Star game is coming up June 17th. It's Saturday, and 10 a.m. is the girls' match. 2 p.m. is the boys' match. You gonna make it there, Evan? You coming down to the ResV All-Stars?
well, I was there last year.
I know you were the only one there last year.
Yeah.
This year, there's going to be more people. I'm pretty excited for that. And yeah, it should be a great day of volleyball. And you can go to resvsystems.com to see who's going to be participating in that match and to catch all the information that I provide. So, Evan, thank you so much, man. Stay well and, keep on rocking, man.
Thanks.